Before I say another word, I want you to do something for yourself. Don't do it for me, do it for you. If you've been feeling like your life has been shaking you awake, if you've been questioning who you are and who it is that you're becoming, if you keep experiencing endings, shifts, losses, emotional downloads, or this strange urge to completely reinvent yourself, I want you to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bells, and stay with me. Because what I'm about to talk about is the exact moment that I realized the version of me I was living wasn't actually me. She was the version that my trauma built. And when that truth hit, baby, it felt like my whole entire soul cracked open. Make sure you guys stay to the end.
Honey, I used to pray for peace in places that only caused me pain. Tried to fix broken people just to feel whole again. Lost myself trying to be enough for everyone but me. Now I breathe through the ache. I sit with my silence. I found power in the pause. And baby, this is my rebirth. Melodic, catchy and repeatable. This the soft life anthem, rebirth season. No more chaos, I found my reason. Breathe in peace, exhale my demons. I don't chase love now, I become the freedom. The storyteller episodes, blending kids, one soul, no time for regrets. Used to cry in the dark, now I coach through the depths. Lost my job, lost myself, but I found my breath. Turned pain into power, yeah. I live with no debt. Debt to my body, debt to my truth. I journal my trauma, I mothered my youth. The girl I used to be had to grieve it too. But the woman I'm becoming, that's the breakthrough. Melodic, catchy and repeatable. This the one the body's dead to, none of fitting twas. Tried it, emotional build, channel building.
Hey y'all, hey, welcome back to Truth, Trust, and Trajectory with your girl, Shakim B, a trauma-informed life coach. I'm also an NLP practitioner, storyteller, and a woman who has survived some shit that should have literally ended me. But instead of it ending me, it actually ended up awakening me. And in this podcast, this is where I tell the truth about my healing, trust the lessons of life, in which has forced me to learn and walk in the trajectory God designed for me, even when it literally scares me. So if you're here, it's because something in your spirit is ready for the truth too. So I want to talk about the moment that I realized I wasn't me. You know, it's wild. For most of my life, I've genuinely believed that who I was, my personality, my habits, the way that I moved, the way that I reacted was literally just me. But one day I had a spiritual breakdown and it felt like a breakthrough. And it actually hit me. I wasn't living as my true self. I was living as the woman I had to become in order to survive. Everything that happened to me, that version of me was sharp, hard, guarded, and hyper independent. A woman who didn't cry because crying never saved her. And a woman who loved from fear, not from safety. I became a woman who walked around with armor because the world had taught her that she had better keep her guard up and protect herself or nobody else would. And that version of myself was necessary. She was necessary, but she was not permanent. And here we are, right? So I want to break down something right here because this is where the psychology meets spirituality. When you go through trauma, especially going through trauma as a youth, your brain literally creates a survival identity. What that is it's a version of you that knows how to navigate danger, chaos, and unpredictability. This version of you learns how to read rooms before you've even physically learned how to read or comprehend, let alone read yourself. It teaches you how to anticipate emotional shifts in people, right? So, like that hyper vigilance, that hypersensitivity, and being able to kind of pick apart what somebody else is feeling, kind of reading between the lines, right? And it teaches you how to be responsible for things that were never yours. It also teaches you how to stay silent in order to avoid conflict, right? So essentially, you're learning how to shrink yourself because you ultimately crave safety and you find that speaking your truth causes turmoil, right? Which is equivalent or the opposite of safety, right? It essentially puts your ego perceptively into a level of danger. It teaches you how to shrink in order to stay safe, how to disconnect from your emotions so that you can function. And that's a pretty heavy one for me because that was something that I really had to learn how to do, right? To the point where I started to look in the mirror and question the woman that was looking back at me. Like, I'm not this person. I remember at one point in my life being so happy, right? I used to be so happy, so outgoing, just so full of life. And now, like when I look at myself, I can still see the resonance or the residue of the trauma. It teaches you how to perform strength while internally screaming for help, right? Because asking for help is dangerous. And I talked about this before in an episode on a different podcast about how, we are essentially trained to be strong, be hyper independent. It's not okay to ask for help, right? Because when you do, you're met with resistance, you're met with judgment, all these things that kind of take away from, the communal part of being able to help other people and then also, being able to accept help for yourself, right? This survival self becomes your personality essentially. But just because it becomes your personality, it doesn't make it your truth. It doesn't mean that it is your particular truth. It's not who you were born to be, right? It's what the byproduct of the trauma, what came out of all of that, right? It's who you had to become in order to stay alive. And here's the part that nobody ever really tells you. Healing requires that this survival identity dies. I'm going to say that again. Healing requires that this survival identity dies. The person that you had to become while you were in survival mode is not the person that you can take with you to your mission, on your mission. You just can't. The two cannot, they can't intertwine, they can't coexist. It's just impossible, right? Because one is broken, the other one is healed or healing. One is climbing up the ladder, right? Whilst the other has descended because that was what was required of that version of you at that particular time. I remember the exact day my identity started to crumble. I wasn't even doing anything deep. Literally, I was just sitting there quiet. That's all I was doing. And suddenly, it felt like I was standing outside of myself, watching the life that I had built literally fall apart. Not because I failed, but because I had outgrown the version of me who built it. It was the strangest feeling ever. Grieving an identity that you never chose, but you also had a hand in actively co creating, crying over a version of yourself that was all you knew, feeling lost because the person that you had to be is no longer needed. It felt like my spirit looked at me and said, "We are not her anymore, and we are legitimately done surviving. It's time to become who you were meant to be." And I think for me, like, that was a really hard time, right? When you go through trauma, there is a certain process, transmutation, if you will, right? And I'm just going to use myself as an example because this is my podcast, right? And I talked about it some time ago, probably at the beginning of the year, when I talked about this process of this internal war that I remember actively. I can still, like, when I focus and on that particular time in my life, I can still feel the turmoil that came from me fighting that good girl, right? That people pleaser, that wanting to fix everything, the self abandonment, right? All of those characteristics of who I was as a person at that particular time, right? Versus the disconnected person, the cold, the callous, right? Because I had to figure out a way to actively protect myself from what I perceived as danger at the time, which would have been my ex, right? Instead of just simply separating myself from that, right? My brain was looking for a way to still stay in this mess of this relationship, right? Whilst transmuting and changing. And it wasn't for the better when I think back on it. So I'll be real with you guys. The scariest part of healing for me, looking back, it was never losing people. It was never losing people. It was losing myself, or at least losing the version of me that I had been clinging so direly and desperately to. I thought about who I was without being hyper independent because this is who I was for years. For years. Hyper independent, codependent. Who am I without trauma responses? Who am I without being in survival mode, right? the habitual victim, the sacrificial lamb, right? The one that would lay everything at the foot of humanity just to say that I made an impact, right? That I was helpful, that I was useful, that I am remembered. Who am I if I'm not the strong one? And if I'm not the caretaker? Who am I if I'm not constantly protecting myself? Healing is what forced me to face the fact that I actually did not know myself. Not at all. I knew my wounds, I knew the things that kept me stagnant and low vibrational energy and frequency. I knew my armor. So, those tidbits of metal that I had to pick up in order to protect myself from this hell of my own making that I continued to submerge myself into, I knew all of my defenses. I knew my coping mechanisms, but the real me, I didn't know. That real version of me had been buried under survival for decades. A lot of people think that spiritual awakening is cute. And I talk about this a lot on my TikTok page, right? How spirituality has been marketed as this really cute aesthetic. Aha. Oh, the soft girl, the soft girlies. That shit is really for the birds, if I'm being honest. And I'm not even trying to be funny or anything like that. If anybody's offended by my cursing, I'm sorry. Find another channel, okay? Because I sprinkle fuck into my content like it's parsley. So if that makes you uncomfortable, you can find someone else, right? Don't focus on the message or the delivery. Focus on the message. But the cuteness of spirituality, things like tarot, incense, meditation, manifestation, taking a cute little fucking bubble bath, and stuff like that. Like, I personally, I think that it's very unfair. It's a marketing ploy, of course, right? Because everybody wants to be able to talk in a really soft, calm voice, and just kind of sort of be like the Kardashians and just unbothered and take beta blockers. But in the perfect world, that could happen. But in the real world, it just doesn't, right? Not everybody has time to sit back and meditate. A lot of people don't even know how to effectively meditate. Some people don't have the financial backing to take luxurious bubble baths or burn incense. Some people don't even know how to use tarot, right? Or do it for themselves. And some people are afraid of it. It's just what it is, right? The real awakening, it feels like your soul is setting everything in your life on fire. That's what it feels like. It's not all cute. The little girlies that, no, it's not. It's not that. It's never gave that. Okay. It's not peaceful. It's not pretty, and it's not gentle. It's a complete, an utter and complete nervous system reset. And it's an emotional detox. It's literally an ego death. I talked about something earlier today, a very transformational book that I read um, about a year and a half ago. It's by Mel Robbins. It's called The Let Them Theory. And I read this on Audible, and I listened to it on Audible, and it was so good that I actually went to get the physical copy. And I did a TikTok video on it because I actually found out that she wasn't the first person that came out with the let them theory, right? It almost went viral, but nevertheless, the message that she talks about in her book, whether she intended on it or not, is the embodiment of an ego death, especially if you're coming as a people pleaser. Let them is literally a hard ass task for someone that literally is just constantly in fight or flight and survival mode. If you are a habitual people pleaser, if you care about how people think about you, how they perceive you, because you have been trained and programmed from birth to give an actual fuck about what everybody thinks about you, regardless of whether it positively impacts your life or your trajectory or not. That is a hard thing, right? Because it's like you have to be okay with letting people be them. And then you have to allow yourself to be yourself. But the problem is that a lot of people don't know who they are fundamentally because they have been spending their entire lives focused on everything outside of them, including people, right? I talked about people pleasers being on the scale of covert narcissists almost a year ago. I did a video on TikTok about that because it's true. But people don't want to admit that, right? I don't know. Nervous system reset is an ego death. It's your intuition screaming louder than your logic. So your internal environment is telling you what your ego doesn't want to hear. It doesn't. It is your body rejecting anything that is not in alignment with your spirit. And a spiritual awakening is the moment that your soul actually says, I refuse to live in survival mode for one more day. I just won't do it. You ever see the people that just wake up out of the blue? And usually you see it on movies. I've yet to meet anybody in real life that has just had that mindset, but well, probably outside of myself, right? But that fucking mindset where somebody just wakes up one day and they're just completely different. Like they've had it. They are up to here with like whatever it is that they've been going on, and you know what I'm saying, all the traumas and the trials and the tribulations of life, and they're just like, fuck it, like I'm cutting my hair off, I'm wearing fucking neon colors every single day, I don't give a fuck what you say, I don't care, right? That's what that looks like. I didn't heal because I wanted to, right? I ultimately ended up healing because the alternative for me was death. And I think I'll do another video because I don't want to drag out any more of these videos past 40 minutes, right? Just for algorithm purposes. But for me, when I say the alternative was death, it was physical, but it was also spiritual, right? And I'm talking an emotional death, the death of my potential, the death of my joy, the death of who I deserved to be. Trauma is literally what had me stuck in these loops. The same dynamics, different faces, the same lessons, different years, same relationship patterns, different men, the same wounds, different triggers. It was like life kept handing me the same test because I kept showing up as the same version of myself. And that hits hard when you actually start to go back and do a timeline comparison of, and I do this quite frequently and quite often. I think it's because like I constantly practice introspection. And I've been doing it like subconsciously for years, right? But there are times that I do it very intentionally and very consciously. But I do take a look at, where I was, at this particular time on this timeline, and then just kind of do an inventory and see like, hey, am I progressing? Do I feel like I'm doing better? It's important. So I want to explain something that is also very important, your identity, which has layers. So the first layer is your core self. That is the real you, the you that existed before the trauma, right? When people say, oh, I've lost myself after this relationship, right? You lost yourself way before then. I'm sorry. Not even going to lie to you, but I get it. Then you have your adaptive self. That's the you that formed from the wounds, the environments, and the survival, right? You ever see like people, they get into like these questionable relationships, right? That are just oh so bad. They're toxic and they're just destructive. And the person is just so dead set on hanging on to that person, like they can't fucking let it go. For the life of you, can't figure out like why are you still with that asshole, right? Or why are you still with that B word? They're so bad for you, right? And it's because that person has a fear of letting go. I don't know if it's the version of themselves that they feel like they may have lost with that person, or maybe they're afraid that they won't find anyone to love them, to care about them, right? Maybe they're running for themselves, who knows? But after the relationship is said and done, they have like these really weird mannerisms, maybe um, they're afraid of like interacting with other people, or maybe they're just standoffish, or they're just assholes. Just, these are things that come, like these are the byproducts of the personality, the characteristics that we take on, right, after being destroyed or allowing ourselves to destroy ourselves in the process of relationship with maybe something that wasn't just beneficial at all to our well-being, right? The next layer is your evolving self. So that is the version of you that you're actually in the process of actively becoming. Most people get stuck in the adaptive self. That is to say, they never peel back the layers far enough to meet their core self because they're literally stunted from whatever situation that they just came from. And so that literally becomes their baseline. They will never get any further because it has traumatized them to that extent that they can't even meet themselves any further. So they'll never evolve because evolution requires a death. They have to actively kill that version and that part of themselves that existed post whatever situation. And a lot of people can't do that because it's scary, right? This is why you see people after a relationship, they'll jump from one person to the next because they don't want to sit by themselves, right? Or they'll just be by themselves forever, afraid of any sort of interaction with anybody else, any sort of depth, intimacy. It scares the shit out of them because they think that everybody is going to show them the same version of love that they just came from. So when my old identity died, I didn't become a new person. I like to consider the fact that I became my true person because for me, I became softer. Not for other people, but for myself. I became more intuitive, and I've always been an intuitive person, right? But I've learned how to use my discernment and trust it. I've learned to trust me, right? I became emotionally aware and I also became more spiritually grounded. And I tell people all the time, especially people that know me, right? Um, Everybody has their process. For the outside looking in, it might not look like I'm progressing, but I know me, I know where I'm headed, right? And so my progress is progressing. It just doesn't look like what other people think it's supposed to look like. And I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. I became honest with myself and I became someone who doesn't abandon her needs for the concept or the ideology of love. Someone who doesn't shrink to keep the peace. Whereas I used to be quiet even when it was literally burning me up inside. Now I speak my truth. And I can say it, in a soft tone, or I can say it in a hood voice. It just depends on what's warranted, right? That's how it's prescribed. But that's just me. I became someone who doesn't chase people who don't choose her. And I don't need more than one reminder or want more than one sign. You only have to show me once, and I'm going to believe you. The old version of me didn't believe people when they said, I don't like you. I don't rock with you like that. You're not my person. You're not my cup of tea. I would have consistently tried to convince people that I was the better choice for them. That we were aligned, right? That they were good. I don't do that anymore. And somewhere I'm a villain in somebody's story, but that's okay, right? Because I became someone that knows that real strength is vulnerability, not silence. This version of me doesn't operate from trauma. She operates from truth. So, this is my closing segment. This is what I want you guys to take away from this. If you're listening to this and something in you is shifting at this particular time, and if you feel that your identity death is happening, and if you feel a version of you slipping away, or like the person you've been is no longer enough, that is not a breakdown, that is a breakthrough. That is not you losing yourself, it is you finding yourself. And that is not pain, it's transformation. So, if this episode cracked something open inside of you, if you felt God speaking through my words, and if you recognize that your survival identity is nested in my story, then make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Not now, but right now. Hit the notification bell so that you never miss another episode. Every single Tuesday, we come out. And I want you to comment rebirth so that I know that you're in this season with me. Also, make sure you guys share this video with one woman you refuse to see stuck in the version of herself that trauma created. Because this podcast right here, this community, this is where we stop surviving and start stepping into who we were destined to become. Welcome to your rebirth. Welcome to Truth, Trust, and Trajectory. And before I end this episode, I want you guys to make sure that you go on over to my website, shakymbe.com. That is NCHUKYMBEE.com, where I have free resources on my website. I'm adding more by the week. I also have a rebirth community on Patreon where I help women heal in power and not science. I'm also creating another community inside of Patreon, so make sure you guys go over to my website, subscribe to my email list, and also download your free 7-day survival kit. I created that for women just like us, so that way you could start working through some of these traumatic things and not live directly in it. Until next time, okay, bye.